architect Power BI for the enterprise. If you didn't join us earlier during the discussion, there's a couple of announcements that have been made recently. Fabric Data Days started today. It's a fun contest where you can just kind of work through some challenges to get some free vouchers for exams. So definitely do check it out. Also, SQLCon was announced in conjunction with FabCon, and so there's going to be a discount code that we'll share with you guys probably in the chat later today. I just got to find it. So if you want to register, well, the early bird pricing is still there. And with that said, we're going to hand it over to Reid so he can do his thing.
Oh, perfect. All right.
And the recording is started. So.
Oh, sec. Let me share my screen here a little bit. To make sure my slides. There you go. And cool. Share window. Begin to share. Perfect. I'll actually have some fun and new things to show as well today on some stuff that I've been working on with some of the latest releases and even on the topic of enterprise modeling. But I'll do the quick little introduction. So my name's Reid Havens. I've been in the industry 12 or 13 years at this point in analytics, starting with Power BI, Power Pivot, all the things reporting. Move my way more over into enterprise stuff like Fabric these days, Lakehouses, warehouses, all the stuff that was in Azure, moved over with the easy button things in the Fabric universe. But yeah, I've been doing YouTube videos now for nearly 7 or 8 years. Some of you might have seen my little avatar guy there I was in very interesting effects with my focus that showed up on my screen. But yeah, I've been doing that for 8 years. I've now actually as well ran a company, a second company for the last 2 years, which some of you might know from my post on LinkedIn. And I'll have some links later for that as well. I run a company with Steve Campbell as well, Analytic Endeavors, that does more of like data platform work, where I realized at some point Fabric's too big for me to know everything. I cannot be a single man team anymore, so I needed additional resources to kind of help with that. But we pretty much just do anything front end and back end in the Microsoft universe, between Databricks to Azure pipelines, etc. But the topic of the day today is going to be largely focused on a few different things around enterprise modeling and Power BI architecture and things along that note. And actually just following a live stream that I did last week with Jeroen, Jay, easier to say in English. He's one of the product managers for Power BI Desktop and DAX. And he was on my live stream last week talking about some of the calendar table updates that have actually came out over from FabCon Europe. And I want to make sure I have my chat up on the side as I talk about this, just in case any questions come up. As I talk, feel free to drop questions into the chat. I have that over on the left of my screen just to monitor that. But the thing that was interesting, to give some anecdotes about FabCon, is both him and Marco had some ideas around what would get popular, because we had two really big things for DAX this year. We had UDFs, user-defined functions, and we had calendar table updates. Both of them thought, oh yeah, like UDFs are like, that's coolish. And they thought everybody would get super hyped about the new calendar stuff, the flexibility. There's both new features for the calendar table and new functions in DAX to leverage it. And they thought that would be the big shiny thing that everybody would freak out about. And there's been very little waves made about or about the calendar table. There's been a lot of waves on UDFs. I agree with them on the fact that I think one's going to be more important to a degree than others in the coming years. So every new model getting built will be leveraging and should be leveraging these calendar functions going forward, like 100%. There is no, no, your model will be faster if you properly associate these, as I'll show you the menu here in a bit. It is going to change every model being built going forward. You don't have to go up and date old models if they're not stuff. There's no point, but it's like a new pattern where this, the moment we had variables, we always use variables now. Same thing with some of the calendar options. UDFs, I'd say, are 60 to 80%. There are going to be some models that don't need them. Very basic models with 10, 20 measures. You don't need a UDF. They are nice to have when you have repeatable patterns and stuff that you want to package, centralize the model, have a function call for them. So they are amazing. They're going to be a game changer for sure. But to me, the difference between the two is 100% of future models should not have UDFs unless you need them. 100% of all future models should have these new calendar features because they provide optimizations. Your calendar table will get faster, which is a really cool one that I want to show you in DAX Studio. But Jay went through a deep dive on my live stream from last week, and I will see if I can pull up the stream off of that, or if any of the moderators here, if you go to my YouTube, it's the latest live stream from Friday. If you feel inclined to drop the link into there, he goes into a deep dive of that, and I want to show you a little couple of takeaways on this to start with, because that ties under enterprise modeling. This is you should do this on every single new model you build. So that's kind of where I want to start, and then I'll have some other stuff to discuss. I'll do a little bit of a choose your own adventure on this one, given our timing, but I want to talk a bit about how the VertiPaq engine works, some optimizations, a bit of UI cleanup to make it friendly and usable, because it's important to clean up your backend and front end when you're, especially if you're building models to share, but also just enterprise discussions around like Power BI stuff. But the shiny new toy is the one that I've literally been working on, because I will be releasing a video in about a week or two that will be this new calendar table that I built to share with the community that is the one that I've used for years with clients, but it's going to be pre-configured with all of these new calendar types. So let me open this up here. So thank you. Yes, exactly. So the big thing that is now available as an option is if you have this turned on in your preview settings, you have to go to File, Options and Settings. It's New Time Intelligence, I believe, is the name of the label. Yes, it's really good. Jay is one of my favorite people. I love Jay. We actually wore some Halloween costumes because it was Halloween when we did the stream. So I had my wizard outfit on, and I got him to wear a funny hat. Where are we? Yes. Nope, that's UDFs. Enhanced DAX Time Intelligence. So I'll only show like a snack size bit of this. His video goes into a whole deep dive on all sorts of cool stuff that I wasn't even fully aware of everything that was part of the update. I just knew some of it. I even learned a bit as the host, just watching him demo some of those things. But with that turned on in your preview feature, here we go, you get an option for calendar options. It used to be mark as date table. You still have that here to be able to mark as your date table, but you can now manage calendars. Creating a calendar to improve query performance as you analyze over different periods of time. So you can define different calendars, like a Gregorian, fiscal. I was literally mid-edits right before this call and making my ISO, but it lets you say which of these categories are related to these levels. So you can't create any new one of these. There's a fixed list of like what are fields available, but you say, oh, for this type, for a week plus a year context, what column provides that? Essentially, the way the calendar worked before is these columns would work like, but Power BI didn't know it was level A or level B. It didn't know what the actual periods were inside of it. It was a text field with some sorting applied, but otherwise the model engine would always filter by date. So if your period was 4 years or 10 years, you would be filtering with a filter statement of basically like 1,000 dates being applied to it. It would only follow the relationship of your calendar table to your fact table. It wasn't very efficient comparatively because everything else was just random columns with groupings. It did not know what those columns were. It didn't understand the other column to your calendar table. This lets you tell it, oh yeah, this text column with whatever format it is, it relates to this level or this. So you can set that up given that you have these in your table. And I want to show you a query that is ran before and after with this that's in DAX Studio just to show you, because I wanted to see if I could pull out the exact pattern that was happening. So these are two just query profiles, and you don't need to know how this is made. The only thing that I want you to kind of like pay attention to is just the fact that this is going to look a little different here at the bottom. It's the query plan that shows you how simple it's running versus not. So I basically had a visual that was sales amount by quarter year. That was it. I think I had some categories and columns, but it was a basic little matrix table. Quarter year was a parent level, no date, just simply give me data by Q1, Q2, Q3. Now, if I can zoom in down here, right, and point to this little guy. Wrong one. 1 sec. I want to draw. Here we go. Okay. Nope. So that number, 731 separate filters to filter for a 3-year date range. That is the only way it knows how to filter in the old universe. Calendars before this month, regardless of if I had year in my visual or quarter or fiscal, doesn't matter. If I had anything besides the date column, it will always fall back to filtering by date. And a big thing to look at right here is it is an 87,000 row table that was loaded into the model. It basically creates it takes the fact table, creates a summary table including the date, and has to build that to summarize my numbers. This is the old universe. That exact same visual that uses that special calendar that I made for Gregorian, where I set up all my columns and associated them with the UI. This is the exact same table with a measure using date add that references the Gregorian. Now, 2 things to note. One, there's a few more queries into here, but comparatively, if I look at just as an example, the storage engine, 290 milliseconds versus 462. So it's like a 40% reduction, and this is a smaller model. But the big thing is, look, the most rows that any one of these loads is 2,000. And very specifically, it is no longer needing to retrieve the date column from my calendar table. It does a filter on the calendar year instead. So there's a filter for 2 values in here rather than 780. And the materialized data, basically, that's being generated in RAM shrunk from 87,000 rows being requested to 2,500. A lot of the videos that I've seen on this have talked about it. This is what I want to show in an upcoming video, but I really want to actually show, look at the query differences. The visual looks identical, but simply by setting a calendar type, oh yeah, these are the associated columns for these levels, it intelligently knows what to do in the backend. It will auto-optimize for you and make your model faster if you have a large fact using this. So I want to emphasize that this is a guaranteed best practice to always do if you have a centralized calendar table that you use in all of your models, because there's a guaranteed performance optimization. And for those of you who have a model that's kind of slow, let's assume you have 500 million rows and it's kind of slow to do date adds and others, you could have hypothetically, an instant increase in performance if the date table is the thing that's slowing you down by going to an existing model and configuring this. It'll take you 15, maybe 30 minutes tops. You just have to go through and make this column is this, just do the mappings via the UI. But this is why I think this is an important update that has come since FabCon in September to today. And I'm just, like I said, getting ready to start doing some videos on it. But I think this will be very instrumental in significant performance increases on time intelligence functions like date add, parallel period, all this other stuff. And I won't get into the nitty gritty of the rest of those. I'll leave that for the live stream where he goes into new features for functions. I'll just briefly mention that there's additional options now in date add and others where, let's assume you're doing a month over month. Well, now if you're at March 29th, there's no February 29th. Should it stop comparing? Should the 29th automatically still compare to the end of the month, which is the 28th, until it gets to the end of March? So you can configure a whole bunch of extra things on comparatives to actually determine how it travels in time. So they added new conditions for various time intelligence functions on top of that. But you saw at least a bit of how the cake is made. But all I did here is it's really, the measure is super simple. Give me 1 sec. It was, I'll just write it. I'll show you. It's in another workbook, but so I can save opening it. So if you wanted to do prior year sales, you would do calculate, and I'm just going to say 1 date add. So this would be, yeah, so instead of doing dim calendar date -1 year, this is the only difference that you do. Instead of this, Gregorian. That's it. That's the only difference in your function. Basically, because in those settings, my Gregorian calendar, I've already specified what column is the date column. There is one of those options in the UI is what's your date column this. So it already knows the whole calendar design, every column in there. So I just say point to this saved calendar on the single calendar table that I have, and it will correctly do its aggregation types. It will know how to roll up and filter better for you using this. So I'd say a big takeaway, and I like to give people shiny new toys to play with, and this is, I think, a nice one that's pertinent to the topic of the day at hand, and a brand new feature kind of to a degree that Power BI has. So highly recommend using it. And the thing that I think I saw is Tyndall definitions for calendars. That's what I love about Tyndall. Hey, this calendar table, I want to move it to a new workbook. You can just go to the Tyndall view, grab the table, drag and drop it, and you get the full definition, including like the query. Here, you actually look at the bottom. This is, you can even see it's including the new calendar functions. This is the UI that I was setting up. It's all defined right here, where there's my fiscal, there's my ISO that I'm building. I think my calendar is a little above that. So if you just copied this into like a new PBX file, it will add your calendar. It'll add the sorting, the folders, the extra calendar types and all that. So you can copy and paste it between a workbook super easily. I'm happy to share this at the end of the session as well for people to migrate if they want to use it. I've tried to build out a calendar that was fairly robust. So I have like almost every type of week you would need, every month, so on. They're foldered in order of size between your calendar, your fiscal. So it's supposed to be kind of an all-inclusive one. I know there's always exceptions of some columns people want to add, but I've over the years kind of built out this master calendar table that tries to meet the need of pretty much every type of scenario people would typically have outside of very custom ones. I don't want to get into 454s and all that, but I feel like calendar, fiscal, and ISO are the three primary easy ones that are usually easy to make. But yeah, happy to share this afterwards. It's just an M query that's been fairly well built out. Yeah, adding two age measures to all of it. Yeah, and when you don't actually, Donald, for your comment on the hiding calendars not needed, you don't actually see the other calendars. Like for all intents and purposes, you still just see the same one here. It will use just the standard relationship basically that you have. Those extra names, Gregorian, fiscal, ISO, so on and so forth, 454, those only show up when you're using time intelligence functions that are doing period jumps, comparatives, things like that. That's where you can reference the name. Otherwise, they're hidden. So you kind of have one calendar that's now become 5 or 6 different calendars, as long as you have the columns in there and grouped in a way that they're organized visually on top of that. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention here, and I'll actually see if I can use my speaking of calendars, 2 things that I'll talk about. One, if you are not, as a model design recommendation for design usability, so this has nothing to do with performance, but if you are not doing it today, highly recommend folder and subfoldering. And before I open another thing related to the calendar, if you have not multi or subfoldered before, there is a couple of string tricks to do that. So just to give you an example, this is an example of a subfolder and a multifolder. So if you want a subfolder, / multifolder, separate with a colon. So in this example, what I wanted to do is the date kind of, it fits in both universes. Like it's both something related to fiscal, in my opinion, and something related to calendar. So I wanted a folder level 1 in both the parents for calendar and fiscal. So I placed it in both. It's a single column. It's just like shortcutted twice, but it allows you to organize if something belongs in 2 spots to a degree. The one downside is anytime you do that, so if you click on it, let me see if I can, it will always expand the other one. So if it's in 2 folders, both with like 30 measures or 30 columns, you're going to get a very long list. So the UI can get a little annoying. So I'm selective with that, but it's a little upgraded trick if you've not done that before. So foldering to begin with, subfoldering is necessary, and multifoldering, I'll give you a really good way to organize stuff when it comes to, yeah, exactly. And you can multifolder as many times as you need to. The string gets a little messy because if you have multi-foldering where one's level 1, one is 4 levels deep, another's 2 levels deep, it's a long string of backslashes and semicolons, but it will work. You have to be particular on putting the things in the right spot, and otherwise it's will end up at a level it probably shouldn't be, or a new folder accidentally. But otherwise, yeah, it's nice and easy to add. I will say be careful. If you ever go up to the folder like this and rename it, it will delete the subfoldering from it. It will update the measure below it, but only to the folder that just got renamed. I've found that out the hard way. All right, the last thing that I want to mention on my calendar table, just to pull this up, yes, the date table hierarchy. I have it on here, but I want to show you a visualization that explains the data a little bit better. Calendar tables are one of the most important things to have in any model, and there's a lot of principles to build them right. So in this case, I present to you something that I refer to as a dependent and an independent hierarchy. So a dependent hierarchy is what Microsoft builds with the outer date time in general. So that's going to be year, quarter, month, and date. They're dependent of each other because quarter by itself doesn't have full context. Month by itself doesn't have full context. If I was to use a hierarchy like this, and I went to next level, not expanded, I'm given Q1 through 4. I don't know what years those are. I get all the months for all the years. So the only way for this visual to work is I have to expand downwards. Now on the other side that we have here, the sales by independent hierarchy. So this is where every level, like quarter year, month year, so they have the full context in a single column. So if I expand, they look similar at that level. But the benefit of this is level 1 it can either be date or text, so it's not a lot. Level 2 is going to be text because it has to be Q2, unless I was doing start of quarter or something else, but I prefer text formatting for this. The value comes in at the third level or deeper. So if I use the expand option with only the month label, I'm left with this. I have to show categorical on the visual itself because it has to concatenate to produce the label. So it's not a very compact option because categorical requires a label for every single point on the axis. Now, the one that I have over here, my month and year column, is just using the start of month with a little bit, where are you? Column? Oh, that's right. Here, which is a bit of formatting. So it's the start of month, but I just formatted it to look like month and year. So if I go to next level, I'm given this option. Because it is still a date data type and it's not being concatenated, it can use a continuous axis, so it shows some data points, labels, but not all of them. So I can fit more onto a visual. And you can still hover over, obviously, and get the rest of them. But the benefit of this is it lets you go down as many levels as you need to and have a continuous axis. I cannot get that at this level. I'm only going to ever get categorical. So I don't like the native hierarchies for calendars because it's a crappy visual experience, in my opinion. So I like the independent hierarchies where each column is self-contained, where you can have a mixture of numerical. Well, better, usually you want text or date. Even numerical can work. If you have enough years, I guess, technically, you could still have a continuous axis, but it will intelligently, as you go one level at a time, automatically switch from categorical to continuous as you move from numerical to text to date. So I think the UI works much better this way, and you get a cleaner visual that can, as needed, fit more data onto it. So that's, I will never limit people from the model, so I will always include both hierarchies because there's always exceptions to the rule of when you might need one versus the other. And like a dependent hierarchy actually works great on a slicer. So being able to have a slicer with year, quarter, month, and day with a natural hierarchy, no repeating values, that works fine there. But I don't like it on my visual. So I put both into a model when I build my own calendar tables with those. But it gives you a nice little design, a way to, I think, build a better mousetrap to a degree. So both serve purposes, but one's more for filtering hierarchically. The other is going to be for visual drill down. But it's important, just one little thing in here on the header icons, you want to turn this off. So expand and next level that's over here, I would recommend having that off because you don't want to double concatenate. If I did this, well, now I get 2013 Q1 2013, 2013 Q1 2013 January 2013. Like it not designed to work that way. So restrict them from being able to use this by making sure that that option is disabled when you publish. It will prevent people from clicking the wrong button. So one small little visual setup with those, but otherwise that the experience is, I think, going to have an overall payout. But I recommend to have both on a calendar table that you're building out with these two. All right. So that's about it for the calendar. The big one I wanted to show is the new features, again with the UI, but then talk about some of the other things. But before I move on to maybe some modeling stuff as well, and helping us understand how the engine works a bit on some modeling tuning. Any questions or anything about the new calendar functions, design, or folders or hierarchies at all? And feel free also, like, you're welcome to either come off mute and or pop questions in if you do have any. Otherwise, I'll start getting the next thing set up. Could be here. Yes. All right.
Reid, I was wondering, have you guys heard if they're ever going to fix those icon switches that will show in desktop, irregardless of publishing?
Oh yeah. I mean, as of like 3 years ago, Mo told me that it was supposed to be coming to desktop. So there is still a giant pending change of like everything about how the service looks coming to desktop. Like we still have the old icons in desktop even versus the service because they have more rounded little like symbols, slightly different. Power query is supposed to be coming with it. So it is someday. What we're going to have, I believe, is there's going to be a button somewhere which will be reader mode preview. And to your question for the others that are listening, if you're wondering what he's talking about, so there are select changes in desktop that cannot be observed until you publish from desktop to the service and when you're in reader mode, which is like what the way that you can look at a report where you can click a slicer but you can't move an object, you can't delete it. You're not editing the page, you're in view only mode. Changes for that are as follows. So there is I feel like I've hung out with Marco enough that like the following comments are as follows. He's started his mannerisms have worked his way into me a little bit. Digressions. So header icon turnoffs, things like that. You can't see, you still see them in desktop. If you were to turn on maintain layer order to prevent these pop-ups from happening, that still shows up in desktop. So I think I might be missing like one, but those are the two big ones. Oh, and visual header, hiding visual level filters. This. Any of these, where's my filter pane? Another thing that's annoying is if you have a bunch of filters set up for somebody in the filter pane and you click on a visual, you get all these extras. If you hide these, you still see them in edit mode. So those are those three big things that you kind of have to like hope you got right, publish it, and you have to test it in the service. There are better tools these days to help monitor that a little bit, but that's the issue of I can't see all changes until publishing. There are a very similar experience with a couple of exceptions for that edit mode only versus reader mode type things. So yes, it is coming. I honestly don't know when, but we'll at some point have a like preview reader mode button in desktop which will mirror the effect of publishing before having to publish. It's just, I think it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would, considering I swear it's two and a half to 3 years ago when Mo did a live stream where I was like, is this ever coming? Like, yeah, it's soon, but it's a Microsoft soon. Yeah, I believe there are a few tie-ins where it's like there's a bunch of products ready, but certain products can't ship without other products. So a lot of it is things get bundled together and they all have to ship at the same time. So I think it's highly likely that's kind of a reason of delays of desktop getting rebuilt, because it will be a huge amount of code that's going to change to like completely change its UI. I think it's going to like a new version of WebView and a bunch of other stuff. But it is a good question because it's an annoyance for some people. You actually gave me a great excuse just to have a small plug for an external tool that I've built that's free for the community that I started building since May. But one of the pain points that I just mentioned is hiding visual level filters. And this tool scans and fixes them for you. So I just want to pull this up, give you a link to the page where you can get it off of the GitHub. But it's a modeling and reporting tool that I've been building out with a lot of vibe coding. But I think it's pretty cool. So this guy, under the report cleanup section, let me just see if I can. I'll scan a random file to see if I can find a few things. Sure, let's do the pop out. Analyze report. There you go. Yeah, so this does like 25 things. It's a Swiss Army knife, but one of them is hide visual level filters. It will scan your report, all pages, identify the number of filters. Yeah, 13 filters will be hidden. There you go. And it'll hide all of them. So it's the equivalent of you going through, clicking, and then come back like an hour later, you're still doing it. You've done it 500 times in a report, and you probably missed one. This programmatically does it with Python code and will automatically hide it in a PBIP file. So if you hate having to do that and you want to, this is a really useful tool for that. I'm going to very brief. It'll take me 2 seconds to pull up. I'd like to share that link with you guys. I'm rather happy with how well this tool has turned out because I'm very much an idea person and I'm not a hardcore Python coder in any degree. And having things like Claude and MCP servers have really helped me to be a really good instructor to build a very cool tool for people. And I'll get to your question as well, evaluation context. But I'll do like a quick, just five minute little plug of what some of this stuff does. So report merger can combine two thin report PBIPs. So let's assume you have like two reports connected to the same model, two files, and like with a couple pages. And at some point, hey, yeah, actually, can we like put these together? And like, well, I had measures, I had a couple report measures, I had like bookmarks. Like it's going to be a pain in the butt to like move all this stuff over. This will just combine all of them for you and makes a new PBIP with all the measures from both that have been moved over, all the pages and all the bookmarks, and it combines them after you scan, and it just builds you a new file. So that one's cool. This one is a layout optimizer. So it will look at your default layout that you have and basically organize it. Like you get a column for fact and basically structures and layers out in a tree structure your fact and your dimensions and your star and snowflake designs in a way that's not just spaghetti. So it organizes your and diagrams your layout, which is nice. For measures with same name, different definitions, it will put them both in, and it picks one of them. It'll call them like one. It'll put like a parentheses one in there next to it to make sure that they're unique between the two of them. So it does have some conflict resolution. All right, let's see. The report cleanup, as I showed you, just lets you know unused items. So like if you have an old theme, any unused visuals or bookmarks, or and then at the moment, the fourth is just hiding visual level filters. So it's just things to clean the report to a degree. Table column widths will just do a bunch of stuff where it lets you define the width of columns in a table or a matrix visual, because you have to do that with your mouse right now, sadly. So you can do fit custom widths, narrow, medium, wide, fit to header, fit to total. So it does programmatic equal adjustments of that to make them prettier and much easier for that, which is really nice. Advanced copy is the other cool one. The report explorer I won't show because that's still in development, but this will copy pages between files, just single pages, as again, assuming that they're connected to the same model. That's a requirement. Or it can copy bookmarks with visuals. So if you have like a pop-out window where there's like 7 visuals connected to these bookmark pairs for like open and closed, it will identify that and then copy that bookmark to any number of pages in the same report or any number of pages in a new report. I'll just show you. This one was the one that I just released, which is pretty cool. But let's do bookmark and visuals copy. Here we go. So yeah, there's my pop-out page, has a pop-out panel. There's my open and closed. There's 23 visuals associated to it. And if I was to execute this, I want to take this pop-out window and all the visuals and copy it to these 5 pages. Or maybe I want to move it to a different workbook. Maybe this is like a new enterprise pop-out pane that I want to put in all of my reports. Like there's option to select a different PBIP and move it to the other ones too. Again, it's assuming that underlying data, it has to be able to find the same columns and measures. But if you have a live connection to the same model, this should be fine. But as you can see, a lot of these are all built off of the idea that I was annoyed to do these things. None of these things are fun to do as a developer. So most of these tools have come from how can I have a button to do something that I personally don't enjoy as part of the development process. But yeah, it's pretty much entirely just been many hours of vibe coding, but cool UI, free to download. There's zero plan to ever like charge this. I just wanted to do something as a community contribution from a cool tool that I've built to continue to help me with development personally. So yeah, feel free to download. Any option to reset all formatted to default so-called Playa theme? Not that I have at the moment. I mean, yeah, it's a little tricky. I would have to even look at the code to do that because I don't know if there's quote unquote a default. You would probably have to basically do a metadata analysis on whatever the format theme is in the theme file, see if it's not matched to the visuals, and then probably do a reset. But that would require a fairly like deep scan across a lot of attributes in the visuals to do something like that. So in theory, yes, something like that could do it. I think that might be some complex thinking for it to do a match for that stuff, because there are dozens, if not hundreds, of formatting attributes like between each visual. To that point, though, there is in the report merger file, if each report has a different theme, it will tell you and actually let you pick that one as a little added bonus. I can show that pretty quick. Merge, first report, merge. Come on. Second report, analyze. Here we go. Yep. So report A has city park theme. Report B has new executive. So in the new report, which would you like to be set as the report theme, considering there's 2, and it will only migrate one of them. So it is there's a nice little theme config if you need to do that. So one, not a PBX. It only works with PBIP structure with PBIR. PBIXs are a nightmarish black box of unstructured JSON code that is very difficult for any tool to edit. PBIP is gloriously simplified and user-friendly. So this isn't 100% just been built around PBIPs, and especially with PBIR format. That's the important one, because their report layer is more foldered and structured. PBXs, I tried, it was 20 times the effort to get it to work and not break things, because they would have to it would have to unzip and then rezip the file to be able to do that. So, but otherwise, page limit, I've seen no page limits on this. I've tested it on something with 30 or 40. The analysis and progress log might take longer just because there's more files to edit if you're going through like 700 files, depending on how big your PBIP is. But there's shouldn't be any maximum limit. Each time I've ever done one of these, it's all of these things run in like 5 to 10 seconds on a local computer. So it's I'm sure somebody will at some point throw a file in there with like 300 pages that will probably break the tool, but any practical number of pages should be fine. If you are building a report well, I'll say. And closing out of this, I didn't want to come up to a question where you did have one earlier that I didn't want to forget. So I think you'll still need to mark as a date table. Yes, so that is still a thing that you mark on calendar tables. Even with the options, you do want to mark as a date table as well. That has not changed. You just have that plus additional features. Okay, let's see. So let me open up. This, yeah. So what I want to do here is I want to talk a little bit, because I've talked about some design, some optimization. We're kind of gone back and forth on like tools design, but all things that are supporting model and or report development. A big one that I think goes into model development is scale. So inefficiencies in the type of data that you're pulling in, not a big deal if you're dealing with 100,000, even a million, couple million rows. Big whoop, you have like a 30, 50 megabyte file, not a problem. But like as soon as you start getting into 5, 10, 20, 40 gigabyte files, like there's bigger ones out there, but now you're eating into your compute units. If you're using Fabric, maybe you're eating into your like the model starting to get slow. So there's a couple of things that I think are good to understand a little bit about how things are stored in the VertiPaq engine and how it works. Because I want to show you the VertiPaq Analyzer, and I'm going to show you a few tricks to help save some space and to ensure your model is going to be like enterprise scalable. But I think it's important to understand why these settings work. So I'm going to skim over a little bit because I have a full day workshop that talks about this. But I think these slides that Steve and I have built for some of our client presentations, and we'll actually be presenting a day's workshop of this, by the way, at FabCon Atlanta next year. We will have an upcoming the title is yet to be announced, but we will be doing a workshop there, just FYI. So if you like this content, feel free to consider checking us out at in Atlanta. Let me do it this way. Yeah, I think this will help set the context a little bit on some of the optimizations that I'll show with the tabular editor and the VertiPaq Analyzer, and specifically how storage works and how it's able to compress the data down. So essentially, like there's a few types of stores that we have. Like traditionally, CSV files and other stuff do like our traditional storage methods of data into text stores it in a row format. So taking away the column, reordering it, it basically strings together the row by row that we have of the table in some kind of a delimited form to cache the data into a file. Now, it's been done for a very long time. It's not necessarily efficient, and it stores all the data in that structure. It just repeats it over and over again for every row that you have. Now, the thing that we have as a problem with this is that we have a lot of repeating values that are stored. They're expensive. A CSV file can easily get into the gigabytes, if not more, as we start to store hundreds of thousands, even millions of rows. A small amount can be a very large storage amount. Now, column storage gives us an option instead to be able to store column by column rather than row by row. So grabbing some of the patterns that are in here and the values that are repeating. Now, the things that we can do with this is we can identify, in this case, that there's actually repeating values that are coming into here. So this allows us to think about something called run length encoding. How often is something repeating? So we have Bill, Sarah, Jane. But looking at this in terms of numbers or something else, I could say 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, you know, so on and so forth. Or 10 3s, 5 5s, written again, 10 3 5 5. So same information, but compacted, compressed, and stored in a lighter format that requires less data. Kind of what the VertiPaq engine does is it structures it in a way to find patterns, remove duplicates, remove repeating things. It stores in a small footprint what is and used to be a lot of data, specifically on repeating values. So let's take another table as an example for run length encoding. So we have here a column of name and their associated clients for, let's assume these are employees and the clients that they might have, maybe a record or something. Now, looking at these column by column, we can make a couple of observations. Bill repeats 3 times, Jane repeats 3 times, Sarah and Alice do not. Same thing over here. So we can then apply now 3 1 for Bill, 3 4 for Jane, 1 7 1 8. I mean, basically the number of times the repeat. So that data is now basically storing the information on what is in that column via the integers we have here. Similarly with client, repeats twice, and then single. Now, if we have this information, we don't need the middle rows because it fills that in. It's basically a fill down, given that it knows the structure of the table that it's attached to. So we have less information that we actually need to store in the model when we're importing this data. And by the way, the beautiful thing about this is how the VertiPaq engine works in Power BI. What I'm telling you right now is knowledge that is directly applicable to how Delta Parquet files also compress data in the service. It's a whole separate discussion on direct link and everything else, but that's why we have direct link, is because Delta Parquet files, when configured appropriately, are essentially the exact same design as how the VertiPaq engine's been doing this for 13 years now. So they're very compatible with each other because they do these algorithms, both of them do, to store in a very small footprint, a large amount of data. So basically, in this case, we can substantially reduce information through unlink encoding with repeated values. So that's a big thing. And I'll show you in the VertiPaq Analyzer is the #1 perpetrator of model size, as you're building models or anything else, is often going to go on the cardinality. I've had 500 million row fact tables that maybe take 1 or 2 gigabytes, and I've had 5 million row fact tables that take 80 gigabytes. It's not the row count, it's how much unique values are in any single column. One column with 5,000 unique values across 500 million rows is nothing. It's a drop of water in the pond. If it has 100 million unique values, or if there's an ID column that's unique for every row, well, you're probably looking at 60 to 70% of a model size. The worst that I've ever seen on a model over 20 gigabytes was there was one column on a fact table of a floating integer, many decimal points, and that was 65% of the 35 gigabyte model for a single column on one of their like 7 fact tables. One column can blow up a model very easily, which is why cardinality is important. I'll show you in the VertiPaq, but I'm setting the stage a bit. I like visuals to help explain how compression works, because you want to know what you're looking at when you see numbers in the VertiPaq Analyzer when looking at a model. Now, dictionary coding similarly is another thought we have as well. And what I'm doing is I'm giving you a snack-sized piece of a few things that are related to different encoding types for Power BI and the VertiPaq engine. There's a lot more that happens in the back end. This is just a surface level. Here's roughly how it works. There's a lot more patterns and really fancy stuff that it does, but this just conceptually helps to explain some of this stuff. So a dictionary encode will allow for a compression and basically keep a separate dictionary and a key back to your original table. So let's take this one. Right now, this table of client information is 137 total characters. Now, if we deduplicated this table, because we have multiple repeat values in here, we get a dictionary like this. What we do instead is recode the main table with the key back to that. Think of it like a dimension table, almost, to a degree, that's automatically keyed in the way back into the engine. You'll never see this happening, but this is what is being stored. We now have 84 characters. So that's another type of encoding it will do, is it will look at the initial table, dedupe it, rekey it, and then store only a distinct list of those values once rather than repeating. And it rebuilds all of this in real time in RAM. Like when you click a slicer, it's accessing this metadata information and automatically remapping and shaping your data in real time to stick into your visual in like a 10th of a second or a 20th of a second. It's a really cool engine that it manages to save between 40 to 70% of like file size when you import into it, but then can rebuild it nearly instantaneously. It's always been something that I've been very impressed with how well this works. I think I might have clicked. One sec. Where was I? Here we go. I was trying to scroll down for the chat and I ended up going off the slide too far. I think I see a question. I thought just a shame segments do not have headers, else we could have pruning. True, yeah. Maybe like if there's a question in there versus a comment, feel free to elaborate. Oh, right, with Delta, yeah, okay, yeah. I won't get into that because I can go into a separate deep dive with Delta stuff, but yeah, I agree. Okay, let me go here. Yeah, so similar with dictionary encoding, it's one of the other types of things, but the goal with all of this stuff is to try to store the least amount of information as possible that keeps the mapping of the table. But these will come into play a little bit, actually, when we talk about data types, and I show you the VertiPaq Analyzer. So we have the column store again here as an example, and kind of doing some of the principles of this, where we can remap these down, bring into basically their locations, the repeat values. But we could also, on top of that, then do dictionary encoding between all of that, which gives us our final result of kind of the rough way that the model is storing column by column. And that's also a reason that it's referred to as a columnar database. COL, yeah, I got always COL database. That is what the VertiPaq engine is, because it looks like a table to you. Tables don't really exist as a concept in the engine itself, somewhat, like, because it's all stored separately. So it's a column by column optimization that it goes through. And a big part with this, I'd say too, is it goes in the case of the Delta Parquet, it's actually writing these to files. It's writing these into the Parquet files and structuring them in a column store, column by column, and with the information kept into there. But it allows for the files to be smaller as it's storing all of that. But an important part about this is the amount of repeat values is determined by how the columns are sorted with each other, because it does not, on a 500 million row table, it's not going to partition all that data together. There's going to be a bunch of automatic partitions to split it up. You can change that, but there's a few million at a time at most that's going to be in there, and the sort order, depending on how it calculates that, because there's a logic that goes into it, thinking on, all right, what if it's like a Rubik's Cube. If I put it in this order, how many colors are next to each other? What about this order? It tries to find the best pattern with the most repeat values per partition for you to get the best optimization. The wider the table, the more possible spacing on the math word, the more the number of possible combinations exponentially increases, the harder it is for it to figure out. So fact tables are very good for being narrow and tall. Dimension tables are okay to be wide, but you want to avoid too wide of a fact table, because the wider you make it, the less optimal your compression will get, just as a rule of thumb. Tall and skinny facts, fat and wide and short dimension is kind of like the key takeaway for that, just to mention. Thank you. Permutations is the word I was on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, I think that helps set the stage a little bit. The whole training goes into Delta and others, but I wanted to talk just a little bit about compression and a few of these that it has. And I believe there's one other slide that I thought was in here. Let's see if I can find. I thought I had value encoding in here. Aha. For some reason, I thought it was in the same section. The last one that I wanted to bring up was value encoding. So it's the most optimal way, mostly, that Power BI will be able to encode your data. So value encoding only works with numbers. Dictionary encoding or other types have to be done on dates, text, and other things. Value encode can figure out your min and your max from your table. Well, if I calculate on a column that my min is 1,000, I can create a dictionary of one value. All I need for like whatever this is a single value, subtract that from the original, and use that as a reference to, again, rebuild the values that are from there. So it allows for a very small dictionary, because columns in the storage space require both the data and the dictionary, essentially, for any column. And those collectively determine how big the megabytes, kilobytes, or gigabytes are required for a column. So we'll see actually in an example of in the demo that I have, of a way to like observe how one type of encoding is set, how big it is, and how we can change it. I will say there's no option to set it. You cannot say, do this encoding type on this column. There is no option to do it. It does that automatically, but you can nudge it in a direction as you build this out. And again, I say that, like, if you're only dealing with like 1,000, 10,000 rows in your fact table, or like 500,000, you can have very ugly facts in there, and it's not going to be a big deal if you're like 20 to 40 megabytes, but it scales very quickly to inefficiencies and extra cost. I regularly, with every client that comes up to us, is like trying to lower their FSKU on Fabric, or even just getting a faster model, because of these inefficiencies really quickly start to collect problems downstream. DAX gets slower, all this other stuff. So with that, I want to show you my model here. Model optimization. I want to show you the VertiPaq engine, and now point to, oh, look, we have a hash encoding. We have this type that's being done. So let me show you the VertiPaq Analyzer. it does analyze the model. It shows you the size, the cardinality, all this stuff, and it's available in 2 places: DAX Studio and Tabular Editor. Either one of those will allow you to use it. I prefer Tabular Editor because I do most of my modeling changes here anyways. But it's built into either Tabular Editor 3 specifically or DAX Studio. How does the system keep track of the relationship among columns? Great question, Don. I'd say a little deeper dive that we get into on this, but there's a whole separate mapping schema of just relationship types. But the dictionary knows the associated rows because that's already been paired together of what relates to what. So there's a much more kind of cobwebs of cool stuff that happens to it. I'm just trying to keep it surface level, but yeah, the model does all that automatically. So let's go ahead and VertiPaq Analyzer, click it here, collect stats. There we are, and scoot this up a bit. There we are. So the thing that I would say is the most important thing to look at, in my opinion, is going to be on the column section here. Tables organizes it, but otherwise, like the thing, if you're trying to save size and you want to get stuff down, it's going to be in this perspective here. And looking at some of these items and things that are going to be the perpetrators of issue. So like, as an example, we have the transaction ID here with a column or cardinality of about 9,000, highest in the model, but also a dictionary size of 401 for that, with a string, basically data type text string. The other big one here is a lot of these doubles. So the transaction ID kind of makes sense. Sometimes you need an ID on your fact table that you can't get around. Like, you know, in a perfect world, you don't need a row by row identifier, hopefully on a 100 million order table, but sometimes you do. If you do need that, then a couple of things that I would recommend for this and some optimization. So let me show you the tables in here. So do not have these as keys or as IDs in your Power BI model for the GUIDs. Like, no. Do not bring these in. If you can create a surrogate key, or you can have somebody in who's your database admin create a surrogate key that will provide the same thing, like an order number, as an example, is likely what you're probably going to want to display on the report page if you need it. Transaction ID should never, ever come in, especially GUIDs, like a product ID, a product GUID versus product key or product ID, because these will kill your size. So much extra data that is not needed versus some type of a surrogate key that's going to be numerical or something else that will save a lot of size on your model, number one. The other thing too that I mentioned that is a huge killer, and we just went through a process with a client that had a 40 gigabyte model. They had a big int decimal, floating decimal thing that was used, where they had up to like 35 decimals that were going out on their I think it was a ratio calculator for like a score, because it was a calculation derived from a division, and that it was a 900 million row table, 65 million unique values, and it took 30% of the model size. We rounded it to 2 decimals, and it shaved 7 gigabytes off their model instantaneously for one column. So I'll do a couple of quick edits here in Power Query, but these are these things that are these silent killers to a degree in models, is people bring in granularities that they don't need, or they bring in GUIDs that they also don't technically need. Oh, that's right. This is Steve's. Do it on. Let's see if I can actually copy this or not. I'm going to like maybe one day. Let's see if I can get it. Here we go. Okay, let's do this. I can copy the table just small enough that I can basically run this on a local copy, and I'll still show you the same transformations. Okay, cool. That works. As long as you can see the demo. So, and cool. So in cases like this, removing the transaction ID, hopefully getting yourself or upstream person to make you a surrogate key. Step number one, any type of dates, either A, convert it to date only. If you don't need time, if you need time, split the columns. Have a time dimension at the lowest level that you need and a date column next to it for that. Otherwise, like, it won't key to your calendar table. You run into a lot of problems. And then in making sure that either in your database or anywhere upstream has converted these, or at a minimum, you can also do it in, you can change it from decimal to fixed. That goes to 4 decimal places out and will automatically truncate. So it does. This is one of my few things that I hate about Power Query. I love it, but this one formats it. Notice how it says 66.24. It's not actually rounding to the cents. It does keep all 4 decimals, but that will save a huge amount of storage space as well. I time and again, every time I audit somebody's model, I can, within probably an hour or two, pending refresh times, I can usually trim fairly reliably 10 to 30% off of a model if it's not been well designed. Like somebody who just kind of self-taught, some of these are such quick wins with stuff. But those are, I would say, the 3 really big takeaways that are going to be silent killers on size on your model is GUIDs instead of IDs, date time instead of date, and any specifically, if you see this as a problem, if you see double, that means that it's not fixed decimal, and it will allow for an infinitely nearly infinite number of decimal points that can come into there. It will kill the cardinality. All 3 of those are really big, quick wins. It's time permitting. I'll also just mention that, like, the turning off auto date time, these also add a lot of bloat. As you can see, every date table that I have has an automatic calendar table built into it, which is expensive. So things like that really go a long way to cleaning up, I would say, the size of the model. And the lower the cardinality of a column, the faster your DAX works against it. You, again, like, I'm going to 500 million row fact table. If you have a sales amount column that has 65,000 unique values, there's only so many numbers that, like, sales can be. If at the 2 cent, if you rounded it or something, or the 3, that will aggregate faster than a column that has like 15 or 25 decimals. So it's a really quick efficiency and file size win, model size win with some of these changes. But that's why I like the VertiPaq Analyzer. It can so quickly let you come in and analyze and see, like, where are my giant, like, worst perpetrators that are in some of these things. And again, it's Tabular Editor 3 and DAX Studio both have them available. I'll pause here. This would take a drink, but also see if anybody has any questions on some of the stuff that I've talked about. And I'm trying to think, because I know, like, we're at about time-ish. I think I can probably show 1 or 2 more things. But I'm also mindful of time and everything too. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, you're right. We're at the top of the hour, but
yeah,
we tend to go over, and there's still people here. So yeah, 1 or 2 more things would be great. Thanks, Reid.
Yeah, let me think. I think I'll just do the last little bit on some general polish on the model. I've talked about backend stuff, and I do want to hit again on a little bit of my golden model. I'll open that up. Let's do this one. So the last thing that I'd mention, I've already talked a little bit about folder organization. A really big one too that I think goes a long way into enterprise design. There's been a Power BI bug that makes me, like, every hour or two have to log in twice. I have the product manager for desktop helping me on this. I'm apparently one of like 5 people who sees a bug that requires continuous throughout the day reauthorization. Let me just really quickly get that just right off screen that I'm having to duo authenticate. It's either going to make me do a once or yep, there it is. Flash screen 1 more time. It's funny, is it like it's authenticated? I get the visuals and I still like, no, you have to log in 1 more time. Here we go. Okay. Very last thing that I'll mention as a little bit of house cleanup is if the goal is, as you're building this stuff out, self-service BI, I want to give you 2 other takeaways for your model design, maybe 3. Number 1, first and foremost, I would very much recommend separating your physical columns with your logical calculations. So having something where you have a DAX folder, a measures folder. I used to call it DAX. The longer I've been in this industry, the more that I realize that like a person is smart, people are dumb, collectively. And that comes to report users as well. So like the keep it simple, stupid methodology. The KISS methodology is very applicable to model design on. So instead of DAX, I usually nowadays like to call tables like this metrics, even though yes, Microsoft has branded their KPI as that to the begrudgingness of a lot of us. But a folder that holds just your calcs in any way that you've chosen to organize them. And the easiest, simplest way to get that into your model is just using the enter data button, literally just having an empty table. And once you've added 1 or more measures, all you have to do is either hide the column that's in there, or you can delete it. Either one works. And then you get this little organization where it shows up at the top. But it goes a long way into, to me, separating basically what filters or organizes visually, like on your rows, your columns, or your slicers, is all your columns down there, and then like the numbers that I want to crunch are going to be kept at the top. So I encourage you to put your measures usually in a centralized folder or series of folders there at the top through a disconnected table that's going to hold them. The kind of takeaway number 2 for self-service BI, if you're trying to create golden data sets, is adding annotations, descriptions as often as you need to. So if there's certain calculations that have a special formula, nowadays we have the create with Copilot. If you have a Copilot available workspace, it's Copilot only, but this explains X, Y, Z, whatever notes go in and make sense. But having those in there, because when people do self-service reporting, you get those as a tooltip that will show up to provide explainer text for that. This works at tables, this works at columns, calculation groups, any of those can have those. So helper text to explain the data, provide transparency is very important for the self-service component as well. With the 2 of those, and the last thing that I'll mention as well for a model is if you get to the point of self-service reporting and you're trying to encourage that, unfortunately, it has to it's a great question. So the question is, if I have free Copilot or some other LLM, can I auto add descriptions? This only connects with I'm pretty sure. You have to attach to a Copilot workspace specifically. So it's annoying. Like, hey, I already pay for other Microsoft Copilots. Why can't I use those? I will say a workaround is what you could do is you could actually, as long as you're willing to share your code with an LLM, you could do this. You could go to semantic model. You could drag it into here, and you could ask it to add descriptions for these, because I believe it is, if I, let me go for sales. Where is let me add a note. Something that's a bit more unique. I'm going to add a note to this guy. Okay, so YOY sales has it. Let's find YOY sales. Yeah, see, so there's already notes here. So you can just give it the model code, go to like Claude or ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever, Gemini, whatever tool you use, copy and paste this, give it up into a description to say for every measure, please look at the model, the relationships, just look at this holistically and provide basic explainer for this. It will spit you back your entire block of code, in theory, as long as it's not too long, with these in place for you. And let's assume that some note was added in here, like this was. You click apply, and it will just reapply the whole thing to your model, and all those notes will be there. So you basically can suck out the model code, stick the model code back in, if you don't have Copilot attached, just as kind of a little bit of an effort. That's one reason that I love the Tyndall view so much. Is it's so easy to programmatically get out and re-inject model structure, and then basically just design your semantic model this way. It's and right as we're wrapping up too, when Kevin is talking again, I have one video that I did back in May, which is 5 really cool tips and tricks for Tyndall View. That's on my Analytic Endeavors YouTube. So I'll make sure to close by giving you that link. But one of many use cases for this. But yeah, it would work for Copilot in theory. It's just, yeah, it's not ideal, but it can still save you some time versus maybe having to do those yourself 200 times. The last one that I wanted to mention is, and I'll get to your question in a second, just so I don't forget this, perspectives. So view, perspective editor. I need to create a perspective. Create perspective. Test. There we go. It's just different configurations of visibility. So a very big enterprise, a very reused enterprise model that has a lot of different audiences. It's pretty common for an enterprise model to get to 40, 50, 60, 100, 200 tables. It's a lot of fields to show, if somebody's doing self-service. So if marketing only needs customer, sales, maybe just last refresh, you can pick and choose like individual measures or tables. It's essentially the equivalent to going and like show and report view, hide and report view. It's just different configurations of visible and hidden. But Power BI and Excel can connect to those perspectives, so you get a filtered fields list that's kind of applicable to the type of report that you're building. So it's a good way to put on horse blinders and get rid of the junk and give you a really filtered list of like the 20 or 30 fields that are applicable to the reports that this audience will need to build. Not security. I want to preface that very strongly. Like, this is not real level security. If anything is hidden, you can still go view hidden and see the other tables that have been hidden by default. They're still there. The data's still there. It's just the default view has been reconfigured to applicable fields that you would have in your data pane. But it's one nice extra feature that I would say good quality shared golden semantic models typically have once the model size gets big enough with enough unique items that are in there. The measure table site. Otherwise, yeah, I think I'll probably wrap up with that. And let me pull up a QR code as well. So give me a moment. But yeah, feel free to come off mute with any questions that you might have while I find the QR code. Yeah, here it is. There you go. And I can paste the link too. Feel free to scan that. And actually, I'll just have this up and let me get the QR code for this. Where is it? Kevin, if you want to come off and if you either have any questions or want to do any of the wrap up, because I'm gonna grab a couple links now for people.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I think KP is still here. I don't know if he wants to come up as well. But yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, the only other things that I really kind of see in there, you're bringing up perspectives, and we had a conversation this weekend on them as well. It was kind of interesting. But evaluation context was saying he thinks you have to use the analysis services connector to use a perspective in a live report.
Yes, if you want, and we have a video on that on my YouTube channel as well. So technically, you normally require a composite model. If you don't have a premium or premium per user, premium capacity, or fabric capacity workspace, but if you have any of those with the XMLA endpoint turned on, you can go to connect analysis services, you put in the string, and you immediately get the pop-up to let you choose the perspective. That is going to go away someday in 6 months or 6 years. I don't know. They are going to get allow for native perspective configuration in a live report with all models at all levels. It's just that the UI requires a few different steps to get there today, which is a little annoying.
Yeah.
But yes, that's one of the reasons I did a video, is because it's a hidden feature, I would say, for premium. And it's really annoying to have to do a composite model when it's literally empty other than connecting to a certain perspective, right?
Yep. Yeah, because perspectives and kind of call it native Power BI or the basic one. The only thing they're really useful for is personalized visuals.
I don't even use that feature.
You know,
No, like it's nobody wants to do that. Like I don't know any client. It's the same thing with asking a question about your data. That came out like 9 years ago. Nobody used it. I don't know report viewers like they don't know visuals. They don't know the right visual. They're probably going to turn it from a good visual to a worse visual. Like, oh, what's a tree map look like? Yeah, and well, you now have a very confusing visual with 95 categories. So it's a well-built report should already deliver, I would say, the information that's needed. And anybody that likes to tinker generally just wants analyzed in Excel in a pivot table. They don't want it visual. They want like Excel tables by the time they want to like make their own data shape. I feel like there's to me, at least in my consulting experience, I've seen very little overlap of self-service people who like to build their own data structures off of a shared model, and people who would want to use the customized visuals. I think the telemetry, even for Microsoft, it's basically an unused feature. Calculation groups are only a little bit better. Also, sadly, very low telemetry on that.
Yeah. Bernard's the only one using calculation groups, right? And,
or visual calcs. Visual calcs are super used. Yeah. Calculation groups have been disappointingly underused.
Well, Belinda loves personalized visuals, so she talks about it in most of her presentations. So just kind of all
it's a cool feature, but it's I think it's something that's cool to show, but not just it doesn't end up becoming added that often. Because it requires quite a bit of setup.
So anybody else have any other questions, anything that they want to ask Reid about while I still have the recording going, or going once, going twice?
I'm just I'll actually stop sharing that. There's the link, and let me get up the other ones. There's 2 videos. There was
the raffle.
YouTube. Yep, the raffle's in there. And do videos. That's my Tyndall video. For merge areas, Tyndall view. So get link, share. This is for Tyndall view tricks. What was the other one? Where is it? Understanding direct link ideas, Excel, perspectives and thin reports. There's the other one. That was one of the first videos that I did on the channel. There. And this one, perspectives. Oh, cool. This actually did a link, or it did the preview. I didn't even know about that until I was complaining about it at the MVP summit to a PM. Like, oh, you can, where, how? The analysis services connect. Like, what are you like? Yeah, if you take the XMLA, like I had no idea about that. So, like, even MVPs can Microsoft buries features very well sometimes.
Yeah, but like I said, it's such a hassle to train somebody to go and do it. Because it's so many extra clicks that I don't see most people even doing it. All right,
that's why you have a starter file. Just have have a folder. In general, it's useful because if you have themes applied and other stuff, or the starter file should always have a calendar table or other things. You could have a series of starter files where it's like this model perspective A, this model perspective B. So they just open and build from that, and save a copy. So that is one way to help encourage adaptation.
That's a good point. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.